Gary Cohn came in to explain the importance of global financial flows to New York. Well, that sounded suspiciously like math. H.R. McMaster came in from the Defense Department to speak truth to power. Well, that got tedious fast. General Kelly became the new chief of staff, and he did something interesting. In his first week in the White House, he didn't say a thing. He just stepped back and watched the show. After a week, he stepped forward. He's like, Mr. President, I think I figured out the problem. You don't read the State Department and the CIA briefing books every morning. You wake up at 3 a.m., you get on Twitter, you watch Fox and Friends. Those are your only information feeds, and you make policy off of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to improve your information feed. So I'm going to take that phone. I see what the general was going for. He did put his finger on part of the problem. But I know how I would respond if someone took away my phone. To the degree that Kelly was still there the last half of last year, he was really just holding down the carpet, and now he's gone too. That just left General Mattis at the Defense Department. He became the only person in the administration that could still talk to the president about things like consequences and context. As a result, the last 3 months of last year, he wasn't even allowed in the room when strategic policy was being discussed. When the meeting was over, someone would hand him his orders, and he'd be dismissed off to the Pentagon to implement them. His last day was New Year's Eve. Folks, that's it. They're all gone. So this thoughtful, deliberative, cautious president we've all become used to is now going to change. We now get to see Trump unleashed. The pace of change is about to skyrocket. There's really only two people in the entire administration that have any autonomy or authority to discuss foreign strategic or economic affairs. Now, the guy on the right, he's fairly famous. That is John Bolton. He's the National Security Advisor. He has a reputation for being a prick. That doesn't mean that he doesn't know what he's doing. This is not his first stint in government. He served under the W administration. He was responsible for the North Korea portfolio. And as part of that, he basically tricked up an 18-nation alliance that included Russia, China, Japan, and France to go and board North Korean vessels. It stopped missile proliferation. It worked. It's still working. The country that he wants to take down is the People's Republic of China. Now, the guy on the left maintains a much lower profile. That's Robert Lighthizer. He's the U.S. Trade Representative. And the USTR is responsible for negotiating and implementing all U.S. trade deals. He's been a very busy boy of late. Now, this is not his first stint in government either. Back in the 1980s, he worked for Reagan. Now, the first Reagan term, quick digression, quick war story. In the 1980s, first half of the 1980s, the Cold War was running hot and heavy. We had a nuclear scare over Berlin, and some of the allies the Reagan administration noticed were doing some things that we really weren't fans of. The French, the Germans, the Japanese, they were all intervening in currency markets, pushing their currencies down, pushing the US dollar up, which allowed them to export more to the US market, stabilize their own home systems. But Reagan really needed all the allies standing shoulder to shoulder to fight the Soviets, so he's willing to look the other way. But come 1985, things had changed. Reagan's re-election was over. He would never face another election. Gorbachev was rising to power in the Soviet Union, so the Cold War was getting calmer. So he drew the allies together at the Plaza Hotel in New York and said, look, we see what you're doing, and you're going to stop, because if you don't, we're going to pull out of the global order, and you can deal with the Russians on your own. We have a side deal. Within 6 months, not only had the intervention stopped, it had reversed, and the US dollar dropped by half. Lighthizer was the Reagan administration's hatchet man assigned to Japan. And whenever he got his orders from the White House, he'd go over to the Japanese Foreign Ministry, lay out the American position, and then when the Japanese started with a rebuttal, he would take off his translator microphone, disassemble it there in front of them, and have a little G.I. Joe war with the pieces while they presented. When they were done, he put it back together, put it back on. He's like, oh, well, that was absolutely riveting, but we're going to do it my way, right? This is the guy whose also #1 target is the People's Republic. The question in my mind is not, are these two gentlemen trying to wrestle China into a subservient position, is whether or not they're just trying to crash the Chinese system outright, because that would be easier. So let's go through the folks that matter. President Moon of South Korea was the first leader in the door. He said, I want a deal. No matter what version of the world after the order, no matter what it looks like, I have to deal with North Korea and Japan and China, and my country cannot exist without American boots on the ground. So whatever you need to do to adjust our trade deal to make sure that you're still involved, let's do it. They caved on everything. Is it enough to make sure American troops will still be there when the time comes? Don't know. But it was the only way there was a possibility. The next country up was Mexico. Now on the left there, you've got Peña Nieto. He is quite possibly the best Mexican leader we've ever had as a negotiating partner on the other side of the border. Speaks fluent English, pro-American, pro-business, pro-trade, wanted to do deals with us on security and migration. Barack Obama would not give him the time of day, and Donald Trump is giving him nothing but insults. Massive wasted opportunity. Taking over for him is Lopez Obrador. He's a weird cat. He combines the blind ideology of Ted Cruz with the shrillness of Elizabeth Warren and the anti-foreigner sentiment of Donald Trump and the body of Nancy Pelosi and the pathological refusal to engage in basic mathematics of Bernie Sanders. All in one guy. Therein lies an opportunity. He knew that if he tried to be a foreign affairs president, he'd just be in a pissing contest with Trump. He sees himself kind of like Bill Clinton as a domestic leader, domestic renewal. So he reached out to Peña and he reached out to Trump and says, look, if you two guys can agree on what the next NAFTA is going to be, I'll get it ratified. So far, he's been a man of his word. The Lighthizer team took that deal and went north. Do we have any Canadians in the room? Security, there's one over here. Hi. This is Christina Freeland. She is the Canadian foreign minister. In my opinion, she's one of the top 10 smartest people Western civilization has ever produced. Now, 3 years ago, I beat her in a debate, but she's foreign minister, so let's just call that a wash. She realized 5 minutes into her first meeting with Donald Trump that she was absolutely the wrong person for the job. Trump has this little foible. He feels he absolutely must be the smartest person in the room. And that was never going to happen as long as Freeland was in the same zip code. She knew that she needed someone with a tight body and a skin-close outfit and fantastic hair and a wonderful smile to put in the front, just nod and smile and never say anything. And she found the perfect person. Justin Trudeau is by far Donald Trump's favorite world leader because he never speaks. He just stands there and nods, and Trump's inner monologue fills in the voids. It's very complimentary. The Canadians call it the hug offensive, and it was working very well until mid-last year when Canada had to host the G7 summit, and all of a sudden Trudeau actually had to speak. And for the first time of Trump's presidency, what Justin Trudeau was saying was not matching the monologue, and he got pissed, and the bilateral relationship collapsed in a day, literally a day. And Lighthizer is like, oh yeah. See, Canada had been dragging its feet in the talks. It was like, nothing's going to happen without our agreement. We're too important. But now that the relationship had collapsed, he was like, we've got to deal with Mexico. Mexico's the larger economy. Mexico is growing more quickly. Mexico has the better demography. Mexico is the country of the future. You're just Canada. And without the global order, you're nothing. So you've got 7 days to agree to our terms, or we'll just do it without you. It only took 6. Shinzo Abe thought he had a deal. He was the second world leader to visit Trump after the inauguration, and they cut a series of agreements on security and naval cooperation and intelligence. And then all of a sudden, the United States slaps Japan with aluminum and steel tariffs. And he's like, what's going on here? We had a deal. You and the carriers were being front, and all the allies were going to be behind you. It was going to be glorious. We were going to take down China. And Trump's like, well, that's interesting that that's what you thought, because that's totally not what I was doing.